Todd Richards here, Roots, Hearts,
and Soul.
Stefan and I are launching this podcast based off cookbook Roots, Heart, and Soul by myself, Todd Richards, with a great help from Chef Stefan, the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Oh, you stop, you. We have such a beautiful history together.
I mean, it's crazy. Really, what people are going to get from this podcast is telling the story of Afro people, Afro cuisine.
We're going to be telling the story of the Pan-African diaspora.
Roots, heart, soul of the world, as we say. We are launching in a couple of weeks here. Some terrific guests. Stay tuned. Follow us on all our social media at Chef Todd Richards in all formats. Chef Stefan, what's yours?
ChefStefan.it, AYITI. This is the correct way to say Haiti.
Well, we're getting education already.
So if you want to find out more, if you want to listen to great stories being told by amazing, amazing culinary talents, we're going to be hearing stories from Africa all the way to the Caribbean, all the way to the Americas. It's going to be something special.
Giving everyone the good rhythm, the good vibes.
Yeah, baby.
We look forward to seeing everyone. Talk soon.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Today's program is brought to you by Korin, a supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. For more information, visit korin.com. Hello, welcome to Japan Eats. I'm your host Akiko Katayama, food writer and director of the New York Japanese Culinary Academy, which promotes a deep understanding of Japanese cuisine in America. We are broadcasting live from Brooklyn, New York. This show is all about Japanese food and food culture. We see sushi every day in the supermarket, but what is beyond sushi? We hear dashi ramen izakaya, but what exactly are they? Japanese food is still a mystery for many people, and I try to demystify it in this program with my good guests. My guest today is Timothy Sullivan, who is the Director of Education and Lead Instructor at the Sake Studies Center at Brooklyn Kura. He has over 16 years of experience teaching about sake, and in 2007, he was awarded the prestigious title Sake Samurai by the Japan Sake Brewers Association. And since 2013, Tim has served as the Global Brand Ambassador for Hakkaitan Sake Brewery. He has played a pivotal role in developing and advancing the American sake industry as well. And Tim is also the co-host of the fun and highly educational podcast, Sake Revolution. And Tim and John Puma's conversations naturally educate you while you laugh. So I highly recommend that you listen to Sake Revolution if you haven't. And today we'll discuss how the Japanese sake industry has been reviving solidly thanks to sake ambassadors and educators like Tim, how the American sake industry has been also powerfully developing, what types of sake to drink now, how you can gain knowledge of sake to make the most of your precious glass, and much, much more. But before we start, Japan Eats is available on the Heritage Radio Network website, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. So please go to iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify, whichever you listen to, and subscribe to Japan Eats. Please write a review. We truly appreciate your feedback. Now, let's start a conversation with Tim Sullivan. Hello, Tim. Welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, so you join us in episodes number 32 and 100 to discuss various topics of sake. And in episode 241, you join again with John Puma to discuss the Sake Revolution podcast. So, but it was 3 years ago, so we have a lot to discuss today.
Okay.
Right. So now you are one of the authoritative figures of sake abroad and in Japan becoming so. So for listeners who have not listened to the past episodes, how do you get into sake? And then you have to talk about you had a dramatic career change as well.
Yeah. So I got into sake back in 2005, basically by going to a sushi restaurant in Manhattan and ordering premium sake for the first time in my life. And that experience that dinner really did change my life, because I had sake and sushi together for the first time. It was premium sake. And at that point in my life, I was 35 years old, and I had never had that experience, that taste before. And it really grabbed my attention. And I said, after that dinner, I said, I have to look into this more. I want to figure out what's going on with this. I've never, heard of sake, and it's so, so good. So what I did in response to that dinner was I actually started blogging about sake back in 2005. And I started a website called Urban Sake, which is still up and running. And I just started blogging about my adventures discovering sake around New York City. And slowly, 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 it morphed into a career. And here we are.
Right. I mean, I really respect accuracy of your knowledge on your blog, and also I think your personality. Right, you used to be a tech person, so I don't know, like some different precisions and some sense of accuracy, and also I don't know, you have a very right background to pursue the sake, but you can objective view to sake. So I really appreciate what you do, because as a Japanese person who grew up in Japan, I couldn't get that perspective and a way to analyze your skills as a person. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, when I meet people, sometimes they ask me if I had a career background in hospitality business, or if I was a bartender or a wine sommelier before. And as you said, I was in tech. I was a web developer before this. So my approach to sake has no influence from any other study of other beverages or food. So it was very pure, and it was a very honest joy in discovering sake. So when I learned about it after that, it was coming from a place of real enthusiasm.
Right. But I can say you could have been very successful in a service business, because your hospitality is pretty always consistent, and people know that.
Thank you.
Right. So, so you have profound hands-on experiences in the traditional sake brewery as well. So tell us about your training at Hakkaisan Brewery, and how did you get the job, and what did you learn from working at the traditional brewery?
Yeah, I began working as a brand ambassador for Hakkaisan back in 2013, and I would represent them and travel around the country and around the world, really, and do trainings for restaurants. I would speak at sake events, and I would pour sake at different tasting events and representing Hakkaisan. And one of the reasons I was so close to Hakkaisan Sake Brewery was because that very first sake I had at that sushi restaurant was a sake from Hakkaisan Brewery. So that brand was always close to my heart. And we developed a working relationship as brand ambassador. But after a few years, I felt, if I really want to understand this brand and represent it correctly, I should work there for some period of time. And I approached the president of the brewery, and I asked him if I could take a year and live at the brewery, do every job in sake production, and really dive deep. And much to my surprise, he said yes. And we agreed that we were in it for the long term, and that I wanted to continue working with their company in the future. And so I started in October of 2016, and I worked and lived in Minami Uonuma, Niigata for 1 year, and literally starting from rice milling all the way to working at the bottling plant at the end of the year. I did every job about 3 or 4 weeks in every department. So I got a deep dive into all the different ways of making sake. But beyond that, really the most important thing was getting to know the local culture and the people that worked there, like getting an insight into their view of the world, their philosophy of making sake. That was way more valuable than, just pushing rice around in the brewery. So I benefited from the practical training, but also getting to know the people and the culture too.
Right. And especially, I got lucky to have 2 trips to Niigata. And Niigata is such a home of sake brewing, and very unique geographic, areas for the very cold temperature, snowy temperature, and all the unique style of sake. And I was impressed also how cohesive they are to promote their own culture, because they're so proud of it. So, yeah. So what did you think you learned from working there? I think 2 winters.
Oh my gosh. Well, I learned a lot of practical things about making sake. And one of my motivations to go there was sometimes I'd be teaching in a sake class before this experience, and someone would ask me a question, and I wasn't quite sure how something was done technically. So being able to be there for all the boring moments behind the scenes, for how things are actually, how you move sake from the tank into the press, what does the pump look like, what's the pressure, all those different things. I got to experience all of that, and it was really fantastic. I think that I really took away that sake is more than liquid in a bottle. It really represents the culture and the people that make it. So we can't separate a sake from its local region, its local culture, and again, those craftspeople that make the sake. That was my biggest takeaway.
Right. Yeah. Whenever I listen to you teaching sake, I feel that you have a very natural, very almost a visceral passion and love for sake. So I think that's why you're such a good educator. Um, yeah. So what do you think is the essence of sake? Other than culture and people that you love, like taste, or it could be wine, but it's not you chose to chose sake as your essence of your life. So what is the essence of sake that you love and want to share with your audience?
Well, for me, it was the fact that sake was a new flavor palette. It was a new flavor for me growing up as an American. And as I mentioned, when I was 35 years old, I had this experience in a sushi restaurant and I discovered sake. And the thing that really grabbed me was that it was a flavor I had never tasted anything like before. I couldn't put it into one of the boxes of something I had experienced. And that was so intriguing to me. And I really, we call it our aha moment when we talk about discovering sake and the wonders of sake. So I had that aha moment, and I was really motivated because I knew I wasn't alone, that there would be other people out there that would enjoy it too, and helping people find their aha moment with sake. Not necessarily the exact same sake I tasted or the sakes that I like, but getting them into the category, getting them to enjoy sake, helping spread that really wonderful feeling of a new discovery in the culinary world. That's something that really motivated me to keep going and start teaching in the first place.
Right. I really feel almost grateful as a Japanese person that you came across that glass of beautiful Hokkaido sake.
Yes.
Right. So the Japanese domestic sake consumption peaked in 1973, and the number of sake breweries dramatically decreased since then, almost like a quarter, I think. And it's not because of the quality of sake is bad. It's actually everything's so good, even improving, but due to drinking population shrinking and also labor shortage, because it's such a hard work to work at a sake brewery, and also influx of competitive products like wine or craft beer. So, however, thanks to someone like you who really spread the charm of sake to the world, the Japanese sake industry has been reviving very powerfully. So, what could you tell us about what's happening in the sake market outside of Japan? Why the sake industry has been reviving, and who's drinking sake? What type of sake people are drinking abroad? Anything you know about the exciting change in the sake market?
Well, I do have a little bit of a unique perspective because I found myself in a very, very lucky position. After I finished my internship at Hakai-san and a deep dive into Japanese sake culture with them in Niigata, I moved back to New York. I started representing them again, and Hakai-san decided to invest into Brooklyn Kura Sake Brewery here in New York. So Hakai-san, where I had been working, and Brooklyn Kura became business partners together. And I found myself in the lucky position to now have the ability to work for both sides of this new partnership. So I have had some insight into what's happening in American sake culture too. I've been working regularly at Brooklyn Kura now for a year, and it's been really encouraging. I think that the sake market in the US and outside of Japan in general is really growing year over year. There's a tremendous interest in sake. But if we pull out a little bit, I think that we're still at the very beginning of what the sake industry is going to become. We don't have a huge number of sake breweries in the US. I think we have around 23 to 25 sake breweries right now in the US. And we would need that to grow a lot more. But it is a very exciting time to be working in the sake industry in the US. Lots of growth, lots of dynamic things happening. And I'm very, very optimistic about the future, given what I've been seeing recently.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Like, because majority of Japanese restaurants almost definitely carries Hakkaisan or Dasai brands, and these are very big forces to promote Japanese sake as a approachable drink in terms of, the style, very sophisticated and clean, and you pair with a lot of different kind of food, and also now I really think Brooklyn Kurap, Brian and Brandon, they really made sake as part of American drink. And now you are joining horses, connecting very traditional Japanese sake brewery, Hakkaisan. So yeah, I'm very excited about what you're doing because you are really the pivotal figure, literally, right?
Well, we're all trying our best, and it's a very exciting situation we're in because we do have knowledge from Japan, we have American know-how, and together we're brewing sake here at Industry City in Brooklyn, and it's absolutely delicious sake. If you had asked me in 2005 when I was just getting started my opinions about American made sake, they wouldn't have been too favorable. But the industry has grown and developed and matured to produce amazing sake. And the sake that Brooklyn Kura makes with support from Hakkaisan is just fantastic. So it's a true partnership, and it's wonderful to be a part of and see that developing.
Right. And of course, beyond the major names of sake brewers, there's so many amazing breweries started to export for the last decades or so to the market abroad. And the American market is really one of the biggest markets. So do you think the traditional sake breweries are adjusting their styles or products to the overseas markets that's thriving? Like new types of sake that could be better paired with non-Japanese food?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of restraints on Japanese sake breweries. They have limits to what ingredients they can add to sake. So they don't have total freedom in Japan to just go crazy and, infuse all kinds of fruits and syrups and acidifiers and sugars. And they can't really do that as freely as we can here in the States. But I think one thing that I've seen come out of Japan as a response to the type of sakes that are being made here and other beverages that are influencing the market is the more wine-like sakes coming out of Japan, things that have a higher acid profile and, kind of mirror very much wine-like profiles. And I find that a very interesting response to wine coming to Japan and also American style sakes emerging.
Interesting. Yeah, and then one time I heard about this new product that made with the flower yeast instead of traditional yeast. And it's like almost like wine, right? So I thought that was inspired by the market overseas. I don't know. Do you know the origin of the flower yeast?
The origin of flower yeast, I think, is almost an academic exercise from some of the agricultural universities. And they were looking for new sources of yeast to create very fruity styles of sake. And I think that exploring those has been really exciting on an academic front and scientific front for the brewing industry in Japan, the sake brewing industry. And it's led to some discoveries of really wonderful and dynamic yeasts that lend fruity, rich, and very aromatic profiles to sake. So I think we're going to see more of that type of innovation in the future.
Right. And I looked up and the number of the breweries that make sake with the flowers, there's like dozens now. So
Mm.
I think it's inspiring, not just for, the foreign market, but I think the sake is traditional, but Japanese traditions have been evolving, always trying to make something to improve, like Kaizen mindset. So I thought it was very interesting. So, yeah. By the way, there's a data. It's a little old, but like as of 2017, Japanese sake is the second favorite among Japanese people. And the number one is beer. That's 61%, and the sake is 35%. The wine is the third, 32%.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then what's amazing, the consumption of alcohol by women increased by 20% compared to 30 years ago. So this kind of like new style, fruity, flowery sake may appeal younger women. And those women started to drink more alcohol because they, I think, probably work harder and they're stressed out, they wind down. And all those interesting social elements may help to promote sake again in the domestic market. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting to have that the different Western influence in producing sake.
Hmm.
Right. Okay. So the along with the increase in sake exports, the North American sake industry has been developing strongly, like you mentioned. There are, I think, according to the Sake Brewers Association in North America, as of last month, there are 27 craft sake breweries. That's excluding major Japanese funded big companies made sake. So, how do you describe the current status of North American sake industry overall?
Yeah, I think it's growing. That would be a good word to describe it. There seems to be people always wanting to learn about sake production, people coming over from beer and wine production who kind of get interested in sake. So I think we're in a period of growth right now. To go along with that, it's really important for established breweries, Brooklyn Kura and other breweries around the country, to do whatever we can to support up and coming brewers, people who may be brewing in their garage or their kitchen and they need help or they need advice or need help finding supplies. I think it's very important that the established brewers of those 25 or 27 breweries really have a way to get help and education to all the up and coming brewers. This is really going to help grow the domestic sake market, and that's going to help everybody at the end of the day. So I'm really optimistic and really looking forward to more and more breweries opening every year. We'll see where we land in 5 or 10 years.
Right. Yeah, a lot of brewers opened even, I think, after 2010. So, yeah, I think it's the speed is accelerating. Yeah, the new flavors, like you said, the regulation is no strict and there's no tradition to follow in America. So, I think Brandon at the Brooklyn Kura, he uses sometimes a beer yeast to make sake or something very experimental, but very analyzed and well makes sense kind of decision he makes. And I tried that. I really like that too. So yeah, those things probably are going to inspire traditional Japanese sake industries, and that's how back and forth it's going to inspire traditional Japanese sake industry as well. That's what I hope.
Yes.
Right. So, do you have any new style of sake made by American sake breweries?
Well, we do make a very unique style of sake that's not traditional in Japan at all. It's one of the sakes that Brandon makes here at Brooklyn Kura. And when I first heard about it, I'm like, I don't know if that's for me. Like, I'm a pretty traditional guy when it comes to sake. But it's called Occidental, and it is a sake that is infused with beer hops. So we make a clear, delicious, premium sake here in Brooklyn. And then we infuse that beer with hops, the green hops that you would use to, flavor beer. and that get soaked for a certain amount of time, and then they're taken out. And then it starts out in a greenish color, but with the exposure to oxygen, it slowly oxidizes into a rosé pink color. And when we pour this sake into the glass for customers, it is wonderful to see their reactions to this rosé pink color in the glass. When you smell this sake, it smells like an IPA, quite honestly. But when you sip it, there is not a trace of bitterness. Of course, there's no carbonation, and it gives you this lovely fruity and herbal character and a nice clean finish. It's silky smooth across the palate, and it is absolutely delicious. It's the type of experimentation that honors Japanese sake styles, but takes it on a little bit of a different direction. And it absolutely has to be delicious. So this sake, the Occidental from Brooklyn Kura, I feel that sake really accomplishes that goal. So that's one of the sakes that is kind of an American style that I'm really excited about.
I think I tried 2 versions. Right after they opened, I had it one top room, and the color was very impressive. And then the second version, the color was slightly different. That means like the really ingredients are always reflecting in the seasonal, and it's very, I don't know, also right, but that's only available on tap from the tap room, or is it available distributed?
That is distributed, yes. So that would be available through our distributor, Skurnik. And you can also, in most times when it's in stock, you can buy it in the tap room, but it's currently out of stock right at this very moment. But there's more being brewed now, so more on the way.
Interesting. Right. So, well, the brewer, Brandon, used to be a cancer drug developer, so he's very analytical, and he is very precise in making decisions. And I really respect Japanese sake being made in a very accurate way. So, all right, so we'll take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll dive into Tim's mission at the Sake Study Center at Brooklyn Kura and his favorite sake right now. So please stay with us. Today's program is brought to you by Korin, a supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. Korin is proud of their Japanese culture and traditions, but they want you to know that their products are not just for Japanese restaurants. Their knives and tableware bring out the best qualities of food from every culture and fit into every restaurant, from French to Pan Asian to American, and that is why they are located in New York City, where people from every country in the world come to eat. Korin's Tribeca showroom is home to the most extensive collection of Japanese chef knives in the world, including Japan. Stop by to view their exquisitely designed tableware and the Welsh natural sharpening stones. They have a whole range of knife services, from repair and rust removal to reshaping and realigning. Korin is dedicated to this ideal, bringing the highest quality Japanese design to your table so you can experience the unparalleled quality of Japanese craftsmanship in your home or restaurant. For more information, visit korin.com. Welcome back. You're listening to Japan Eats on Heritage Radio Network, HRN. I'm your host, Akiko Tema, and my guest today is Timothy Sullivan, who is the Director of Education and Lead Instructor at Sake Studies Center at Brooklyn Kura. He has played a pivotal role in developing and advancing American sake industry for the last 16 years. So now, let's talk about your relatively new project at the Sake Studies Center at Brooklyn Kura. So first of all, what is Sake Studies Center?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that Hakai-san Sake Brewery in Niigata invested into Brooklyn Kura here in New York, and they became business partners. And one of their goals in that partnership was to expand the existing Brooklyn Kura Sake Brewery. And that has happened. We now have an expanded production facility here and a bigger tap room. But we had a little bit more of a vision, and one thing we wanted to make sure we included was a place for sake education. Everyone on the team believes that education is absolutely key to getting more people, more consumers, and more people in the hospitality industry to understand more about sake. So we all believe that teaching people about sake, along with making sake and selling sake, is like 3 pillars to having this work well. So the Sake Studies Center was a part of Brooklyn Kura. And basically, we take the tap room space on days when we're not full with customers, and we teach classes, seminars, and we do tasting events. And we have a wide range of classes that we offer. We teach classes for consumers, so people who are just interested in giving sake a taste and want to learn the basics and come in and have some fun. So we have like 1 hour and 90-minute classes. Those classes can be things like introduction to sake, so the very basics. We also have a really popular sake and cheese pairing class. We've done sake and desserts pairing classes. That was a lot of fun. We also have a few that are coming up for the fall. We have a sparkling sake class, and we also have a sake temperature class. So we have a program of classes that are open to consumers. We want people to come in, have fun, taste some really delicious sake, and do some fun food and sake pairings too.
Right. So, what types of audiences do you have? Like from beginners to professionals to what's the range?
Yeah, so I was just talking about our consumer classes. Those are people who would come to our tap room for people who are interested in sake. Those are consumers coming in and enjoying themselves and just getting an initial impression of sake. But we also have another part of the curriculum that we offer, and that is professional training. So I developed a course called the Sake Server Certification. This is a course that we offer in person here at Brooklyn Kura, and we also teach it online. It's a 1-day training, and it's meant for people who sell and serve sake. You can attend if you are anyone who works in hospitality, but specifically people who work in restaurants and need to stand up in front of a table and explain the basics of sake to customers. We want to give them the knowledge to be really confident and comfortable in selling sake. It also works for people who sell sake in a retail store. We can teach them the best way to describe sake, give them an overview of all the technical knowledge they would need. And it's a 1-day training. It doesn't go as deep as like a sake sommelier type training, but not every person in a restaurant needs that level of training. So it's a great introduction for people who are in the sake industry, working as a server or working in a restaurant or a liquor store. And it really empowers them to sell more sake and get more sake out there.
Right. Yeah, I think if I had someone who's very knowledgeable and passionate about sake at the restaurant, I would definitely try to drink his or her recommendations. So that sounds like very exciting. And according to the Sake Study Center's website, in addition to your in-person and online courses, you make your classroom and community to host sake educators from around the world. So I was intrigued by this sentence. So does that mean that you collaborate with Japanese sake breweries?
Yes, we do. We want to make the Sake Studies Center not just an area to come for education that we created, but we also want to open up this space to make it a real community center for education. So, for example, we are hosting other teachers who come to our space to hold classes. We have the Sake School of America recently offered a WSET Level 3 class in sake in our space. In October, we have Michael Tremblay coming with his Sake Scholar course. And we also have John Gauntner coming with one of his classes. So these are internationally renowned people that offer great education. And we wanted to make sure that our classroom and our space is open for other people to come in and teach. So as I said, we want to create a community here, and we want to make the Sake Studies Center a real hub for education and community, anything related to sake.
Right, interesting. So usually whenever I get a chance to speak to those sake professionals or sake brewers, actual producers of Master Toji, it's always a trading, trade events. Like there's so many tables and you don't know where to go and you speak to someone like one word and this is great, thank you so much. But this sounds like the space you are offering at Sake Studies Center. Sounds like it's a meeting point, more extensive and deep opportunities for sake brewers to get to know who's drinking, and also the drinkers or the who wants to learn about sake get to know what actually people are making, how they're making, with what kind of philosophy. So I thought it was a very, very important, cool space that you are providing to the community of sake overall.
Yeah, and I really agree with what you said. And I also, one point I wanted to make that I think is really important is that we're the only sake school in the country that's connected to a working sake brewery. So whether other educators come in or we offer our own classes here, one thing that we can offer that is really valuable to students is we can walk them through the brewery and they can taste the sake as it's fermenting. They can have some freshly made koji. They can taste some sake kasu, which is the pressings after we press the sake. And it's a real interactive experience. You can walk through the brewery, see the machinery, and then come back to the classroom and taste sake that was made with the rice you just saw. So the interactive part of it is really powerful and really important. So we want to share that with everyone who's interested in teaching about sake.
Right. Well, by the way, I love eating sake kasu. That's really like the dessert. Right. So you are also the global brand ambassador for Kaisan Sake Brewery, like you said. So you have a great vantage point to see the global sake industry, not just being closely at Brooklyn Kura and at the center. So how do you predict the global sake industry in 5 to 10 or 20 years?
Well, I think that there's a very bright future ahead for all things sake. I have invested my career in this industry, and I'm very confident that there's going to be a lot of growth and a lot of wonderful things ahead for sake. The industry right now is very, very, very small, so there's lots of room for growth. And one of the great things about the situation we're in right now is that whenever we promote other producers or promote other educators or we work together, I think that that's going to help grow the entire industry. Mm-hmm. So it's a wonderful position to be in where we can all support each other and applaud each other and grow the industry as a community. So I think, when things get larger and larger and larger, there's more direct competition. But where things stand right now, I think anytime we work together, we're supporting each other and growing the industry. So that makes me really happy. And I think we all just have to work really hard. And my goal at the end of the day is to get sake into people's hands who are a little bit curious about it, have them taste something really delicious, and that will be the first step on their sake journey. So going back to my beginning, my origin story, giving people that aha moment is what I think will grow the industry at the end of the day. So sharing that experience with my students and the community is really going to enable the future of the industry, in my opinion.
Right. Oh, that's exciting. And just imagining that encounter with your new discovery, right? It's the quality of sake you can find in this country is really high now. So, yeah, I think we are in the right direction. And also, I think the craft sake movement, the craft about everything, craft beer, craft, distilled beverage, all those trends are everywhere. And also from the culinary side, koji became a big keyword. So I think all those meeting points of koji, craft, and sake industry, like educators, what do you do? Everything is coming into one picture. So yeah, I have a bright future image as well. So for our listeners who are not familiar with sake and haven't had that moment of, oh, this is my sake, what type of sake would you recommend to try, and with what kind of food?
Well, one thing I love about sake is that there's so many varieties. A lot of people who are not in the sake world yet think that sake is just one thing, or maybe they had sake when they were in college and they didn't love it. So the first thing I like to tell people is that there is a tremendous variety to explore. That's one thing I love about the sake industry. If you're in the mood for something earthy and rich, fruity and bright, crisp and clean, there's a wide variety of styles out there. So if you find something, maybe it's not your cup of tea, you can move on to another style. And I always pride myself on helping people find a sake that they like. When people are just getting started, there's two styles that I recommend. One is what got me excited about sake, which is crisp, clean, and dry sake. So that's very famous in the Niigata region where I studied. And that sake is almost water-like in its clarity. You sip on it and it's crisp, it's refreshing, it's lightly dry on the finish, and it really cleanses your palate when you're eating food. And it's a wonderful food pairing sake. And another style that I really like to recommend to beginners is unpasteurized sake. That's sake that is more fruity, more rich, sometimes really expressive aromas of tropical fruit like pineapple and melon. And it's really easy to love. It's really engaging, rich and fruity, and again, silky smooth on the palate. The finish usually lingers a little bit longer, more like a wine-like finish. And that style of sake is also really easy to sip and just enjoy immediately. You don't need any explanation or any instruction. So crisp, clean, and dry, and then fruity, unpasteurized sake. I think those two are great areas to jump off for beginners.
Interesting. Yeah, so there are so many new sake labels in the market, from those made of flowers to the ancient Bodaimoto style sake. So, what are you excited about most among new products? Because there's so many that I really get sometimes confused now when I look at sake new products at the sake store.
Yeah, so there's a really wide variety of sakes, and I think that's one of the great things about the sake industry is that there's so many styles of sake that consumers can find a taste that suits them. And when I have people in my class, they may not really fall in love with every style of sake we serve them, but I always pride myself that we can find them something that they really will like. So the variety that's out there is really wonderful. And I think it's important to teach about that and help people understand that sake is not just one thing. There's a really wide variety out there.
Right, interesting. So, yeah, when I grew up, my father was drinking sake and I just didn't pay attention at all. But the more I started to learn about sake and started to drink sake with my dad, I changed my preference over time because you learn and then sometimes you go back to what you used to like. So it's you develop your own preference with the knowledge and like seasonality or anything you drink with. It's a fun part of sake experience. So yeah, and what is your favorite style of sake right now? Which assuming it keeps changing.
Oh yeah, well I'm a fanboy of crisp and clean sake from living in Niigata, and some people think of that as a very simple style, but for me, I think it's like the Swiss Army knife of sake because you can pair it with so many things. It's easy drinking, it cleanses your palate, it's smooth and clean, and you can really use it in so many situations. So I always make sure that I have some Niigata style, crisp, clean, and dry sake on hand. It's just my go-to. When I first got into sake, I was really impressed by very aromatic, fruity sakes or sakes that were super umami driven. And that distracted me for a little while, but I feel like I came full circle back around, or maybe I'm just becoming an old man and I'm getting old man sake taste. I don't know, but I've come back around to really crisp and clean sakes. They're so easy drinking. We say sessionable sakes that you can enjoy with the whole meal, enjoy through the whole evening, and your palate doesn't get tired. That type of sake I really, really enjoy. So I always recommend that, of course.
Interesting. And especially it's a seasonal, like summer, crisp, refreshing. Yeah, but one thing I always think, I realize that, there's the word Kimoto Yamahai, which I think is more often seen at sake shops in America. So do you have any thoughts on this? Would you recommend drinking that more older style of sake, like Kimoto Yamahai?
Yeah, Kimoto and Yamahai are really unique styles of sake. They use a yeast starter method that is a little bit of an older style, and you can get really funky, earthy flavors in those styles of sake. I like to use those in food pairing situations because I think they bring a lot of umami, a lot of rice flavor. And, they may not be ideal for like sipping after work if you just want to relax and have easy drinking sake. But if you want something that will really pair dynamically with different types of food, I think that Kimoto and Yamahai, with their full-bodied umami-driven flavors, can be just so beautiful and can really open the eyes of people who taste them. So they're really important to learn about and study. And I love to drink them when I'm doing food pairing exercise.
Right. So, so for listeners who wants to try many other things, you can also take Tim's classes at the Brooklyn class at Sake Study Center. All right. So what are your plans and dreams, Tim?
Well, I have one dream that I've had for a long time, which is to write a book about sake. And I have several ideas, and I've been working on ideas all along. And in the next couple of years, I'd love to release a book about sake. I think that would be something that would make me very happy and would be like a highlight of my career. I've been teaching sake many years, and I've learned a lot of lessons. And I'd love to share those in a book in the future.
Right. I hope you're going to incorporate your personal experiences, because that's very, very unique. And not many people have experienced that, including Japanese people. So, well, keep me posted, and we can really definitely talk about it when it comes out.
Yeah, sounds great.
Right. Okay. So where can we find your updates online and on social media? And also, where can we take your classes?
Yeah, so if you're interested in the sake classes here at Brooklyn Kura, I recommend you go to our website, sakestudiescenter.com. That's all one word, sakestudiescenter.com. And we have our calendar. You can sign up for classes right on that site. And every class that we teach here includes a brewery tour as well. So every time you come for a tasting, you get a brewery tour. So it's really fun. The schedule for those classes is online. We're also on Instagram at Sake Studies Center. And if you're interested in visiting the Brooklyn Kura tap room, we're open Thursday through Sunday if you just want to come in and try some sake on tap. We also have a great kitchen here at the tap room. Just want to stop by and just have a drink. The tap room is open again Thursday through Sunday, and you can visit brooklynkura.com to learn about the tap room hours. And if you want to follow my personal sake adventures, you can visit my Instagram at Urban Sake or visit urbansake.com.
Awesome. Wow, so exciting. And I don't know how you can manage all those different responsibilities, but good luck, and I look forward to your book coming out.
Thank you so much. You'll be the first to get a copy.
Okay, great. All right. So, well, thank you for joining us again today, Tim. So, look forward to the next conversation.
Thank you so much.
So, listeners, if you have any questions or comments about the show or suggestions for show topics or guests, please contact us at japaneats@heritageradionetwork.org or akikotayama.com. Japan Needs' weekly program is always available at heritageradionetwork.org, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. Engineer is Liam Warner, and thanks for listening. I will see you next week.
Japan Eats is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.